Hello, I'm Sharon Pinder, President and CEO of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council, and operator of the U.S. Department of Commerce, Virginia MBDA Business Center. And I'm really proud to say that today because we just launched that business center. But welcome to Hot Chat Podcast Minority Business Connection Season 2, Episode 1. I feel like I have a series on Netflix featuring Vice President National Solution Sales Quentin Gayles. Today we're speaking with Quentin, who works for a $2.5 billion minority-owned business enterprise and who leads the U.S. Field Sales Organization. Quite impressive, right? So sit back and relax, and this will be surely a conversation that you will find of value and an exciting discussion. As we continue our work and our mission to feature one-on-one conversations with minority businesses, CEOs, supply diversity professionals, procurement professionals, chief procurement officers, et cetera, from some of the leading companies across the capital region. In these Hot Chat podcasts, we will spotlight the successes, the challenges, the resources, and opportunity that exist for our vast network of minority businesses. We will also continue to showcase our corporate partners who share in our vision to help drive equity and economic development across this country, especially during these most challenging times. So stay tuned and feel free to share your thoughts on topics that may be of interest to you at our website at www.crmsdccares.com. Now, before we get started with the conversation with Quentin, let's take time to recognize those folks who help us pay our bills. Our sponsors, our title sponsors, Exelon, which is comprised of BGE and Pepco, Southwest Airlines, Hilton, Amicus, one of our premier minority businesses, Capital One, CompuGain, JDC Events, another one of our MBEs, SB and Company, one of the most prolific accounting firms across this country, minorities, and Proud Street, Stroud Priest. I'm sorry. So let's bring on Quentin if we can. Before he comes on, let me just share with you a little background. As Vice President of National Solution Sales for Zones, a $2.5 billion information technology and service company, Quentin Gayles' primary focus is enabling client success. He leads the U.S. Field Sales Organization, as I shared, and is responsible for executing company strategy. We'll talk to him about that. The recruitment of top sales and management talent. He also provides cross-functional leadership and fosters executive collaboration with OEMs and partners. Quentin is a practice sales leader with demonstrated ability to earn client trusted advisor status through reliable delivery of technology and business solutions to satisfy quantifiable business outcomes. Able to combine innovative sales, business, and technical acumen to overachieve large sales quotas as an individual contributor and leader. Recognize top talent, adept to strategic thinking and planning to efficiently position broad product solutions and services portfolio to global companies. We're going to just break that down and get a better understanding. May I introduce you, Mr. Quentin Gayles, with Zones. How you doing, Quentin?
Sharon, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the warm introduction and the time today.
Oh, when you talk about it, and those of us in particular that have owned minority businesses or have been in this advocacy role, as I have for the last 6 or so years, when you then meet a successful minority business, particularly one like Zones, it's a tremendous honor. And there's a lot that we would like to just know because it is, and it helps us as an organization to kind of bring someone on that should achieve success in the way that you have. So thank you for your time today. Can you tell us a little bit about, we look at you, handsome young man. Zones is a $2.5 billion company. And when I talked about your role as a practice sales leader, tell us a little bit more about your background and how did you, in terms of your journey, how did you get where you are right now?
Again, happy to Sharon, and it's really been an exciting journey. If I go back, 20 plus years ago, as I came out of college, my first role in life was one as a network engineer and analyst. So I was one of the technical guys. I referred to myself as a geek. I was designing, layer 3 networks, which this was before the day and age, of where voice over IP came in. So
Mhm.
managed a lot of large financial institutions as well as law firms, which I think I saw was one of your title sponsors. And what I quickly discovered is that as much as I enjoyed the technical challenge, which I still do to this day, what really excited me was helping clients solve their problems, and really where the intersection of technology, would come into the equation. So I went on this very long arc. I am not the traditional sales professional that came out of college and immediately went to sales training and went through the progression. I started off as a very technical resource and then got into client service delivery, client operations, and eventually executive services management before I made the leap to sales. And what I would tell you, I think what that has done for me in terms of working with clients is I really understand that when that technology doesn't work and when they don't get an
True.
outcome they want, that's an impact. One story I refer to often is at the time we were deploying retail technology, and that retail technology did not work in a large retailer with thousands of locations. And the manager came to me and said, Quentin, I'm going to miss my son's soccer game because this technology is not operating the way we expected it to. It wasn't necessarily a pure technology problem related to one vendor or my company, but the impact was when that technology didn't operate, they couldn't serve their customers and they had other downstream impacts. So, Sharon, that's one of the differences I think I have relative to maybe others who have started purely in a sales profession.
But what is it about sales? I hear what you're saying that it was a non-traditional route, but what is it about sales that really fired your rockets, though?
Yeah, so to carry that story forward, as I was the technical expert, as I was the services delivery expert, I eventually got into solution architecture. And as someone would tell me 10, 15 years ago, that's one of the hardest roles you could have because it was a hybrid of being client facing, going to understand again the challenges that our customers had, but then being able to take those challenges, go back into the line of business, and understand the intersection of where our services and our solution offering could produce an outcome. And so to answer your question directly, what I figured out quite quickly is that as a solution architect, I had lots of influence, I had a seat at the table, but it was really that sales executive that owned the client relationship that the client went to when they had a challenge and a problem. And I recognize to have that ownership and to have that accountability, I was going to have to make the transition from a sales adjacent role as a solution architect and many others I had carried up to that point to a full quota carrying sales executive responsible for the relationship and the financial health of both the client and my organization.
So it sounds like you were able to make that transition from the tech side to the sales side within Zones. How long have you been at the Zones organization?
Yeah, so with Zones, the story is in 2016, I was part of an acquisition. I was with a company called Infrastructure, which is now the services division of Zones. Infrastructure was a national managed service provider. And, Zones' story is one that goes back 35 plus years. So
Okay.
my intersection comes in 2016, where Feroz Lalji, our chairman and CEO, recognized that he wanted to continue to advance the value we could provide to our clients. Zones had been known up until that point as a great global supply chain as a service solution provider. What does that mean? It means that whether you're a large Fortune 100 global enterprise or a Fortune 2000 organization, when you think about the kinds of technology you need, whether it's devices that live at the edge, such as laptops and desktops, or if you start to think about that network and data center infrastructure, zones have been practiced in designing and procuring and deploying that technology for years. With the acquisition of infrastructure, what it allowed us to do is to complete that full lifecycle service will by not only continuing to help with the design and the deployment, but now we could bring to bear professional and technical services. So, as a CEO, if you have a big challenge within your business, we have principal engineers that can sit down, understand, design to the outcomes you want, and then actually help deploy and manage that technology throughout its life cycle at your locations.
So let me ask you a question, Quentin, because we have business owners
Mhm.
who are listening, and they aspire, to be where Zones is now. And I hear what you're saying, that you came on board as a part of an acquisition. But let's just put in a box around sales for right now.
Sure.
What advice in terms of infrastructure, in terms of delivery, in terms of um, strategies, or the kind of people that would you give our listeners, in terms of if they were looking at their organizations, um, that they should keep in mind in building that sales, because they're so important. The business development part is so important. What
Right.
advice would you give them in building that sales organization?
Happy to take that. So, it starts with a plan. There's first that self assessment as an organization. What are you really good at? And, having a good, crisp understanding of what that is. At Zones, building off of that GCAS kind of start that we had, we recognized that adjacent services to support the technology we were selling is where we wanted to start. So, kind of back to someone in the community, the first thing is understanding your capabilities, what you're good at. You also have to understand what needs work from a maturity model perspective. And so you build that plan. In some cases, maybe you want to go out and you want to recruit talent to build up your capabilities. In other instances, maybe you want to go the partnership route. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong, but
Mhm.
again, it starts with a self assessment of your environment. The second thing I would say is, plans and strategies are great. So I would say you have to understand the client market and the segment you wish to serve. What, how do the clients like to buy? Who is your competition in that space? And then how are you going to differentiate yourself? That's really important. And as you kind of start to get the stakes of that proactive plan, what do we do well? How do we build a go to market strategy that aligns with our solution and our services offer? Then you can start to look at the execution piece, which is profiling, what level and what type of sales talent do you need? What might a typical opportunity or a sales cycle look like? What are the other resources that you might need to support? It could be a solution architect. It could be some other subject matter expertise. And then again, as you start to pull those elements together, then you get to a place to where you can turn on the execution engine, and it becomes a continuous cycle. You start with an idea and an outcome in mind, and as you begin to get results, then obviously you can change the trajectory to adjust as required.
Hmm. That sounds very interesting. So it depended upon your market, your target market, depended upon what's happening in the industry as to how you craft that strategy. And does that then also drive the type of people that you would hire to do so?
100%. For instance, in my current life, cloud transformation as it relates to the cloud has been, going on for a really long time. And I can remember telling someone 20 years ago, if you ever had an online email, account with a national provider, you were in the cloud many, many years ago. But as businesses have transformed and, you've seen we're going to build lots of heavy metal data centers on prem. Maybe we saw some early adopters move everything to the cloud. And as the economics of, putting everything in the cloud have changed, what I see now is clients really right sizing what workloads, what applications need to be in the cloud for a user experience or for backup or recovery, or what needs to be on prem due to regulations and privacy. And so you might imagine, Sharon, or you might imagine that in my environment, I have sellers that were really skilled at selling data center and network infrastructure.
Hmm.
That sales cycle to support that hardware and the adjacent solutions is a very different sales cycle from a cloud engagement model. So, kind of back to the profile of the resource, the hardware solution seller, very relevant, still very important. The cloud solution seller, very important, but two different backgrounds, two different skill sets, two different solution tracks, if you will.
Okay. So right now, Zones, of course, has a lot of firepower. So
Mhm.
let's go back, and it sounds like it was before your time, but I don't know how much you know in terms of how Zones started, and then when did it? Has it been an organic growth? Has it been growth through acquisition? And do you get involved in that level of strategy?
Yes, the answer is I do get involved. So within the current hierarchy, of course, we have Feroz Lauji, our chairman and CEO,
Hmm.
Derek Halleck, who is our president, and I report to Derek as the VP of National Solution Sales. And so, as I like to say, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu, and I have a
Yeah.
seat at the table. So going back to Zones' earliest days, as told to me, like many other technology companies in the late '90s, literally started as a outbound catalog source technology company. And as the industry matured and evolved, Feroz had the insight to go out and hire, inside account managers who were responsible for reaching out to clients, again, understanding their technology needs and pulling together those solutions as required. And so, as that business model matured in the early 2000s, there was an acquisition of a regional solution provider in the Chicago area, and that brought enhanced capabilities in terms of our technology solution centers. And simply, our technology solution centers is where we take all of that
Mm.
hardware, all of that application, and we integrate it so that when it shows up at a client environment, we want it as close to plug and play or just log in with your credentials and off you go. And so if you go from kind of the late 90s, the focus on lots of technology at scale, to enhancing and building out the technology integration services capabilities in the early 2000s. And then the next major acquisition in the US that I'm familiar with would be the acquisition of infrastructure. What Feroz has always been credited with is understanding how the market dynamics are changing and
Mm.
ensuring that Zones is best positioned to grow and to serve that changing client market.
That's very important. Say that again. You're saying that what he's been very good at is basically understanding where the market is trending. Did I understand that?
At 100%. And, that comes through, I can't say enough good about Feroz, but, in terms of the energy and effort he puts in to understand what's happening in the market in the economy at large. And then it starts with that, reflection of where
Mm.
are we as an organization, and, where we have opportunities. That's really our job as executives, to understand those opportunities and build plans. And so, I can recall the very first computer that I bought commercially, besides my Commodore 64. I bought it through a catalog,
Okay.
and that's what you did. And if you think about the fact Zone started, in that era, and
Hmm.
now we're in this digital shopping experience where people can go and buy millions of dollars of cloud consumption or of technology just using a pane of glass, not necessarily talking to a sales individual. And so, Zones has been adept at, again, staying ahead of those changes and making sure we can meet and serve our clients where they are.
That's very interesting, and thank you very, very much for sharing that. It sounds like a lot of time is spent with client satisfaction. Can you
Yeah.
tell me how Zones has helped clients respond to this labor and talent shortage that we see in the market? What are the strategies around that we see in the market today? Because in every industry is different in terms of that. You hear about the resignation syndrome that's going on right now. So how has Zones been able to respond to that?
Sure. So, what I would tell you is, we now have a formalized staffing practice offer. Really, what that was born out of is in many of our clients that maybe we started to serve from a technology solution standpoint. And the clients may have come to us and said, I have a brand new data center I need to stand up or decommission. And Zones, I sure could use some help. Now, in some cases, that could be a project-based opportunity where we write a statement of work. That's something that Zones has done for a very long time. But perhaps as you now get into the operational model of supporting that equipment, it becomes how do you provide the right resources with the right skill set to potentially operate and perform the task you might need to provide in a data center. And that's really what Zones has really matured, is responding to what our clients have asked for, providing technical resources. It could be a senior engineer in a virtualized environment. It could be a network engineer to go out to facilities and perform work Monday through Friday or on some scheduled basis. And what clients have really been proactive and happy about is the fact that Zones has been able to source the right resources with the right credentials, with the right quality and attributes to come into their environment, be an extension of their team, and again, provide that outcome that the client's looking for.
Outstanding. So how will Zones keep technology solutions flowing despite the global technology supply chain and logistics challenge? I mean, the pandemic has breeded a lot, in terms of workforce, and now we're looking at the supply chain and logistics challenges. How do you play into that?
Yeah, so I would say, even prior to the pandemic in 2020, the
Hmm.
global technology supply chain had been impacted. And if my memory serves me, there was an event in 2018 with a chip manufacturer that it's kind of my first memory of we have major problems in terms of being able to source technology and get it to clients where they need it. And so ultimately, what Zones was able to do is bring together a suite of technology and solutions. I'll go back to the pillar of 30 plus years or 35 plus years of experience as global supply chain as a service. We know how to procure and deploy. What we had to figure out how to get even smarter about was how do we help the OEMs and even get ahead of what they think they might be able to produce? Because if you're an end user and you have a new employee that's starting tomorrow, and if that new employee shows up and they don't have the technology they need to be successful, probably not a pretty good experience.
Hmm.
Or conversely, if you have lots of distributed locations and now you're impacting your ability to open those locations, probably not good for your balance sheet. So ultimately, clients said, hey, we understand the macro global economy and supply chain issue. Zones, how can we work better together? And simply put, what we were able to do is get deeper into our clients' roadmaps and technology schedules so that we could be that advisor and say, if you have a use case for a certain spec of end user device or for a certain switch or router or data center device, these providers appear to have the most robust supply chain solutions. And so we could work together in partnership and we could go ahead and place an order, get in line and get in queue so that when your go live date was coming, we didn't run into issues of, oh, the technology didn't show up or, oh, the ship date has now slipped. We solve for that by understanding what the average duration was of ship dates and production times. And it's really a testament to our supply chain and our logistics and our partner and program management office, who works directly with all of the largest OEMs and with supply chain and distribution partners. So we're not just taking something we read on a website or an abstract report. We're getting into details of when your technology will be produced. When is it going to show up, and when can we have resources there to execute against that bill of work?
Outstanding. Could you talk a little bit about the supply diversity program that you all have at Zones? And if I'm a minority business, how can I make the connection with you to see what some opportunities are to work with you to meet your your E and I commitment?
Yeah, very happy to. So what I would say is on a personal note, I have really missed the ability for, the in-person council and chapter events. It's something that, every executive and team member at Zones has the opportunity to participate in. And it's very important. It's part of our fabric. It's part of our DNA. And so what I would tell you as the national leader, each of my area vice presidents and territory vice presidents, they are engaged with their local chapters. They are engaged with their client, supplier, and diversity offices. And we're always looking for opportunities to partner with tier two and tier three diverse suppliers because, again, there's a lot that Zones
Sure.
can offer directly, but we also want to support our local community diverse businesses. And that is as simple as having that linkage with our region and territory vice presidents. And then at the national level, my peer, Gail Kavanaugh, from a supplier diversity perspective, would be the best resource to engage kind of at a holistic top down level.
Outstanding, outstanding. Just an FYI, and we certainly appreciate, and that's why we're having the conversation today, because Zone sought us out as as an affiliate council, and so we look forward to the engagement with you. We have a program that would be great to engage you in. We can talk about it, but we have a Lift as We Climb, MBE to MBE, and certainly would love the fact of engaging Zones in a mentor protege program of that type. And so looking at that and contract opportunities, is there I thought I saw something, but is there a website or something that people can go to understand? Oh, I see, supply.diversity@zones.com
Yes.
to get more information. And yeah, it sound like what you're saying is that Zones and believes in engaging in the particularly in the geographical areas where they reside. And so we can look forward to engagement from Zones and getting, because we know that business is about relationship. And so how do we develop those relationships with Zone? We look forward to that happening. And part of building a relationship, Quentin, quite frankly, is the fact that you're appearing on this podcast so people can learn a little bit more about Zones, to take out the mystique, because I love the fact that it's such a successful company. And you kind of wonder, you kind of aspire to do that. It's like, well, how in the world did they do it? And so I certainly appreciate you sharing that. Is there anything else what's coming down the pike for you? As we look at things like the infrastructure bill that just got signed, Build Back Better, once they decide where that's going. It seems like the CEO of Zones has been a master around looking at what's in the future and positioning the company to be able to accommodate it. What's in that crystal ball right now?
Yeah, well, lots of opportunity is what I would say. Last year, living through the pandemic as we all did here on planet Earth, Zones found opportunity, and discreetly it was around, one day we woke up, we went to the office, and the next day we had to potentially figure out how to work in a different setting. Maybe you were an essential worker and you had unique requirements to go into an office, or maybe you were in a remote or a virtual setting. And so Zones developed a remote worker solution that we deployed very quickly. But in terms of the future and where we're going, the one thing I neglected to mention is that from a business unit perspective, the way that we're organized is I talked a lot about global supply chain as a service, near and dear, very important. Within my sales organization, we're focused in that IT solution realm, which is that data center and network infrastructure, as well as cloud and the cloud technical services, as well as professional and managed. So weaving in the challenges we've seen in the labor market around
Mhm.
shortages, we've seen the headlines around the Great Recession. clients are coming to us saying, hey, how can I do more with less? I can't get the resources I need and they're not qualified. And so Zones is really filling in the gap to ensure that, those people can continue to run their business, that technology supply chain is not a disruption. And we feel very uniquely suited to continue to serve the market and grow as a result.
Okay, sound like that's the key to the kingdom. How do you do more with less?
Yeah, that's right.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Zones, for being one of our MBE Gold sponsors. Certainly appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Hopefully, this is the beginning of a long term relationship. I know that it is, as we get to kind of know each other and figure out where the collaboration points are. And so, if there's anything that we can do for you as an organization here locally, I know that you're national, that you are. That you're engaged in different markets. And so, please let us know. And so, thank you very, 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 very much. We feel like we've had a seat at the table with you today, to figure out kind of like the inner workings. So thank you very, very much.
Pleasure was entirely mine and looking forward to working together.
Okay. Thank you, Quentin.
Thank
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, that has been a robust, rich conversation. And you heard it first here in terms of how does a company become a $2.5 billion organization? Well, one of the things that they resolved and figured out to do is they made Quentin Gayles the vice president of National Solution Sales. Sales makes the world go round. And so we're appreciative of having that information. So as we bring to closure this podcast, this episode, I'd like to take time out to recognize all of our corporate sponsors and thank you, corporations, for all that you continue to do. We have some, and you'll see here, and for those who are just listening to us, I'll quickly go through AARP, Allianz, AT&T, BAE Systems, BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, the Ellison Group, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, um, FRS, Horseshoe Casino, Ideal Electric, Leidos, Lockheed Martin, M&T Bank, McCormick, Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority, Northrop Grumman, Peapod, PNC Bank, Salesforce, Sodexo, Truist, United States Postal Service, Washington Gas, Zillion Technologies, and Zillion was one of our Class 3 um, um, regional supplier of the year. And next to it, of course, is Zones. Maybe we can get Zillion and Zones together, like the Z's, right? And so before we go, let me share with you some upcoming events. Today, we announce our historic milestone, the launch of our Virginia MBDA Center. We received $2 million of less next 5 years in order to run that operation in Alexandria, Virginia, with a satellite office in Richmond. And so we again thank everyone who had everything to do with us landing that particular deal and for the operation and more to come on that. Please save the date. We have our annual business meeting on Friday, December the 3rd, as we host this meeting and highlights what has happened over the past year, but more importantly, looking to the future and what the future will bring. And lastly, please stay connected with us as we're planning more of these great discussions with our minority businesses, our corporate members. And up next is one of my favorite folks as well, Arnold Sowell, who serves on our board of directors and is a retired chief procurement officer, but he keeps us in the game by providing us plenty of advice and support. We look forward to talking about to Arnold. And so, as we wrap and close this segment, I'd like to thank our coronavirus response and relief team, and with the funding from MBDA that we're able to do these, and Grable Media for all of your hard work behind the scenes to help us deliver this great content for our audience. And lastly, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at CRMSDC. Our podcast will be featured on, you can get our podcast rather on Spotify, Google, and Apple. Thank you so much for your time. See you next time.